The northern provinces of Vietnam had barely entered autumn when the skies turned dark with anger. A violent storm swept across the land, leaving chaos and fear in its wake. Within hours, rivers surged beyond their banks, roads vanished beneath angry waves, and desperate cries for help echoed from village to village. On television screens, the images were heartbreaking: rooftops barely visible above the water, entire rice fields transformed into endless lakes of brown. In one small home, James sat silently before the flickering light of the TV. The room was quiet, but his heart thundered. He had come to love this land, its people, its warmth, its stubborn strength. Now, all he could see was suffering. He turned to Diep, his voice breaking. "Diep, look at this. The North is suffering terribly." "We have to do something, now." Diep's hands clenched. Born and raised in the northern countryside, she understood all too well the cruel rhythm of storm season, the dread that came with every thunderclap. Her voice trembled, but her resolve did not. "You're right, James. I can't rest either." "If we can help, we must go." Mobilizing hope, the decision was instant and unstoppable. Within hours, the quiet house turned into a whirlwind of preparation. Diep called her friends, colleagues, anyone who could help. Donations poured in: blankets, raincoats, instant noodles, rice, and bottled water. James added more: medicine, milk for children, flashlights, batteries, and life jackets. Little Nhi, their daughter, joined in eagerly, stacking each packet of noodles with care, labeling water boxes in her small handwriting. The house overflowed with the sound of effort and purpose. Outside, the rain refused to stop. The sky had turned to a constant sheet of gray. At dawn, James loaded the truck, shoulders tense beneath the weight of urgency. Beside him, Diep fastened her first aid backpack, her face pale but determined, into the flood. The journey to the mountains was long and brutal. The road disappeared in stretches of muddy water. Landslides had carved open the earth. Relief vehicles formed a solemn caravan, headlights piercing through sheets of white rain. Inside each car, hearts beat with one common wish: to reach those who still had hope. When they finally arrived, the world before them looked like a painting washed in sorrow. An entire riverside commune had vanished beneath the flood. Only the red tips of tiled roofs poked out from the muddy water. Families huddled on rooftops, waving frantically. Children trembled in the cold, their tears indistinguishable from the rain. The elderly sat still, their faces lined with exhaustion, and yet, when the relief boats appeared, their eyes brightened with fragile hope. James leapt out of the truck, his boots sinking into knee-deep water. He joined Diep and the other volunteers, forming human chains to pass sacks of rice, boxes of noodles, and bottles of water to waiting boats. Every movement was slow, heavy, but relentless. The loudspeaker echoed across the flooded plain. Rest assured, relief has arrived. No one will be left behind. Applause mixed with sobs, and for a moment, the downpour sounded almost like clapping hands. The Cultural House Refuge. By afternoon, they reached the commune's cultural house, now a makeshift evacuation center. Hundreds were gathered there, drenched and exhausted. Their clothes clung to their skin, their eyes hollowed by fear and fatigue. Yet when James handed out a simple meal, a packet of noodles, a bottle of clean water, their faces softened. A flicker of peace, however brief, returned. Diep knelt beside a small boy, no older than 5, his hair tangled and his hands trembling as he held a carton of milk. "Where is your home, little one?" she asked gently. He looked up, lips quivering. "My house was swept away." "My father's still outside the dike. He's taking care of the buffalo." Before Diep could reply, a voice shouted from outside, urgent, panicked. A small boat had capsized in the river. 4 people were struggling in the current. The rescue. Without hesitation, James ran. He dove into the torrent, the cold cutting into his skin like knives. The current roared, fierce and unyielding, but James moved with determination, one arm, then another, slicing through the flood. He reached the first man, pulling him toward the shore. Then another. And another. By the time the last person was hauled up, his breath came in ragged bursts, his arms shaking with exhaustion. But they were alive, all of them. When Diep reached him, her eyes filled with tears. "James, you scared me so much," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But, thank you." Around them, cheers erupted, cries of relief mingled with the endless sound of rain. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause, as if nature itself bowed in respect to the stubbornness of human love. Night among survivors. That night, the relief team stayed at the cultural house. The dinner was simple, white rice soaked in floodwater, a few pieces of dried fish, yet it tasted like victory. Under the dim glow of a lantern, James listened to the villagers' stories. Some had lost their homes. Others had lost everything, fields, gardens, even family. His heart ached, but his admiration grew. "The Vietnamese people are so resilient," he murmured. "I feel honored to stand among them." The morning after, when dawn came, the rain finally relented. A faint gold shimmer spread across the landscape. Roofs emerging from the receding water. Fields blanketed in thick mud. People began to clean. There was laughter again, faint but real. As long as there are people, one woman said, there is everything. James and Diep rolled up their sleeves. Together, they scrubbed away layers of mud, passed out dry clothes and medicine, and helped rebuild what little could be salvaged. Before leaving, an elderly man took James's hand, gripping it tightly. "Thank you, mister." James. "And thank you, Ms. Diep," he said, his voice trembling. "You crossed rivers and storms to help strangers." "We will never forget." A promise of peace. As their truck rolled away, James looked through the rear window. Dozens of villagers stood waving, faces streaked with tears, but smiling. Above them, the clouds finally parted. Sunlight poured over the flooded fields like a blessing. In the front seat, silence filled the space between the two. Then James spoke softly. "Diep, I think this is what truly matters. Helping people, when they need it most." Diep turned to him, her eyes shimmering. "Yes, James. And if we still have the strength, we must continue." They exchanged a look, one of exhaustion, but also of shared belief. Outside, the road stretched long and uncertain. But in their hearts, a quiet truth glowed brighter than the sun returning after the storm. Human love can overcome even the fiercest floods. Their mission that day ended, but the echoes of compassion would remain, rippling outward, like sunlight glinting on the calm after chaos.